Welcome back to the Mentor Roulette grind. This time, the Wheel of Jobs decided that we play Summoner on a Monday evening, and this set kind of had this weird sequencing where we do one thing a bunch and then another a bunch. You'll understand when we get there. That said, for Duty 1, we went to Yuweyawata field station, and it went mostly as expected. Although our healer had some trouble both on the second and final boss, so it was fortunate I was playing a job with a raise. I do have 2 tips for the second boss. Livin' da vida cani loca. During the intermission with the spinny cursor, the first tip is that if you find it difficult to aim the direction you're moving because the cursor's moving too fast, is that the cursor stops when you move. So by simply tapping forward quickly, you will move very little, but it effectively slows down the cursor, making it easier to catch the direction you want to move. You have a lot more time than you think as well, so calm down and focus, and you can do it. The second tip, also regarding this mechanic, is if you do realize you won't be able to carefully make it out to the edge, just force your way through. Just run straight through the goop. While doing this will hurt a lot and also reduce your damage output. Here's the thing. If you don't make it to the edge, you will die anyway, which is even worse, so simply barreling through is the better option in that situation. An additional bonus tip here is if you're playing a job with mobility options, you can use these too. Black Mage, Pictomancer, Ninja, Viper, Monk, Dragoon, Sage and White Mage all have ways to either dash straight to the edge or can jump to someone else, allowing you to survive off the back of someone else getting it right. On the final boss, our healer simply had some poor planning, which led to them getting bashed in by the multi-hit mechanics throughout the fight. I don't think "just don't get hit, Lamau" is a very helpful piece of advice, but that's ultimately what went wrong. Again, fortunately, I was there with Rays, and we made it through with no wipes. For Duty 2, we went as an instant replacement in Weeping City of Mhach. As usual, replacement. We had a lot of deaths on Forgol, the classic Necropurge guy. This fight in particular is quite intuitive, which is usually why so many die to it. The essential mechanic is the green goop the boss puts down throughout the fight, and it applies a zombie effect to you, with 1 stack just protecting you from his one-shotting attack. 2 stacks instead mind controls you, although you will also survive, I think. What makes it so confusing is, ironically, the way the boss shows the green goop once or twice before you need to stand in it. So by the time it is needed, first-timers may have concluded you simply dodge it. On the positive side, the boss will show Mega Death while you can still get the goop the first time he uses that particular combo. And every subsequent instance of the goop, you simply need to get hit again. But it is quite brutal if you don't get it the first time, as it is incredibly likely you just go down again. But once again, 0 wipes despite all the chaos. For Duty 3, starting off the normal raid phase, we went to O5N, Ghost Train. Whenever I get level 70 duties as summoner, I wish I had a crazy spell speed build to really push the damage. Unfortunately, I don't. So there. A detail I really like about this fight is how right at the start the boss shows how the spotlights remove the ghosts before targeting you with the spotlights. Remember, in the last parts of the fight, that when you get sent flying, you suddenly need to be grabbed by a ghost, or you will die. For Duty 4, we went to the not normal raid, Hero in a Half Shell, Turtle Power, and it appeared our tank got a bit lost in the sauce for a moment and had to be reminded to not kill the turtle. But we got through quick and easy as expected. For Duty 5, getting back to raids, we went to M1N, Black Cat. And there's Sana and Tila. Hello! Things go about as expected. Shockingly, no one dying to falling through the floor or anything. Something pretty funny that happened was that apparently someone had accidentally queued into the wrong duty. I'm guessing they meant to queue for Dancing Green. Oh well. They stayed for the clear, so a quick clear as usual. The thing is, it is surprisingly recent I've had Summoner through Mentor Roulette, so many of the tips I can give I feel like I recently gave already. But that's how a random roulette is going to be. For Duty 6, we went to P7N Agdistis. This fight has various somewhat sudden movement requirements, so my recommendation when planning out your summoner rotation is to try and front load Ifrit a bit where you can, where you know it seems to be safe, as it can be insanely inconvenient if you're in the middle of Ifrit and the boss then requires you to move. Because of the way the boss also tends to telegraph the movement you need to perform a second or two in advance, starting to lean towards where you need to be in advance can help too. I realize Summoner has way more Gs these they are mobile than not, but ignoring the caster part can really screw you over at the worst of times. A particular example of where you can really plan in advance is that when the boss summons the birds for the first time, there are specific spots all the way up in melee range that are always safe. Like, I always move to this specific spot myself. For DD7, we went to A4N, Manipulator, and look, Taldemar is here. Summoner is incredibly handy in this level range, especially for bosses like this. The combination of Dreadworm Trance, Ifrit and Ruby Ruins, and the Titan and Garuda summons combined, takes around 31 seconds to fully resolve. The rest of your 1 minute long looping rotation is essentially just different flavored ruins that all do the lowest damage you have available. So, if for example the boss is untargetable for like 50% of the fight, as long as it isn't precisely when your Dreadworm Trance is happening, it doesn't really matter, since it just means you spend a larger percentage of the active time doing good attacks. Manipulator has a handful of times where this comes up, which is why I'm bringing this up in the first place. Why the Topaz and Emerald runes don't really matter is simply because they do the same potency per second as regular rune at this level, meaning the only difference between them is the small gain from gaining slightly more auto attacks during them, if you remember to do that. Ruby Rune does significantly more damage though. For 3D8, we went to P9N, Kokytos. Eat, fight, eat, fight! And a mildly funny detail that happened in this duty is that it seemed like I did not get targeted by any mechanic that targeted players. Always the other DPS and healers. That's just how it is when a boss has many mechanics that target 3 players. Someone has to be the lucky one, and sometimes they are repeatedly the lucky one. The best tip I can give for this boss as summoner is the same as I gave for Agdistis. When you know it is safe for you to stand still, you should prioritize Ifrit to get it out the door, as sometimes you will be forced to suddenly move somewhere else. The key to keep in mind is that while getting a few Titan hits in during Searing Light is the best way to get the most out of your damage buffs, if that's also the only convenient time to use Ifrit, then those attacks are worthwhile too. Although, in fairness, Kokytos and most any boss will not force you to move so often that it has to be there. You know, just think about when you do your standing still rotation. For 3D9, switching to the Guildhest phase, we went to Assistant Branch Manager, but not a dog. And Taldemar was here too. Here, I made a point of using my instant cast as an opportunity to run ahead and break barricades. In fact, by accident, I managed to do a pretty nifty trick. I activated Summon Emerald on one barrier as it dies, then when I attack the next barrier over, Emerald was already there ready to attack it for a slightly bigger burst, I guess. I also made use of Swiftcast to sneak one more ruin into Ether Charge, although it is kind of strange with Ether Charge that the potency gains it offers barely means it is like actually a damage gain on its own to use, since it costs a ruin cast to use and then sort of piecemeal returns it to you assuming you get enough ruins out. Yes, the potency offered by the summons after that makes it worth it, but it is still kind of funny how Ether Charge itself doesn't do much. For 3D10, we went to With a Taste of Your Breath. Ugh, I'm off this ride. Quick and easy as usual. A perhaps odd tip for super short duties like this is to make sure to swiftcast the last ruin in Ether Charge to maximize its value, and to start with Ifrit as it does the most damage at this level, and if the fight is short enough, skip through Topaz and Emerald quickly to get those summon hits that are stronger than the ruin casts out as well. For duty 11, we went to you're toxic. I'm slipping under. This is basically same as before, just do it the same way again. Although, as demonstrated here, consider using Emerald before Topaz, as Emerald Ruin is actually mildly stronger than regular Ruin, relatively speaking, while Topaz Ruin is equal. For duty 12, we have a talk with the assisting branch manager, which also is not a dog, strangely. And in this one, things get a bit crazy. Initially, we all get hit by bombs as, how much would it hurt, right? Turns out, a bit. And it stuns. We should have known, considering the Blue Mage bomb spell also stuns. Possibly due to the confusion induced by this surprising turn of events, we actually missed a couple gobs as we ran up the tree, which led to a rather awkward ending when we beat the boss, and then had to run back down as the gobs reset if you get too far away. And yeah, the guild test requires killing all the mobs. For duty 13, we went to and Taldamar is here again. This is really an awkward one for summoners, as you don't have that many instant casts for the first part. But as long as you focus the sylphs if they try to silence, you should be fine. For duty 14, we went to Do You Know Your Enemy? I think the best you can do here as a summoner is simply ether charge and hit the enemies you can. Then you have Ruby and Ruby Ruins with a Gobu in the second half. No AoE, remember? For duty 15, finishing off the guild test phase, we have You Raise Me Up, but only once each, typically. The best you can do here as a summoner is mostly set up to burst everything down quickly once the invuln drops from the last guy. Simply ether charge right off the bat and get going. Then you'll see how much you have to work with for the second wave. And finally, for duty 16, we are a 9-minute replacement in Thornmarch Extreme. As we enter, the team is also missing a tank, and hey, no secrets here, I was actively communicating with Taldamar as this was happening, so when I let them know this was the case, guess who appears? Long story short, our first attempt fails because we have a bit of a misunderstanding leading to a Mog's Guard dying way too early in the final wave, so we fail to get his fluffiness, praise be, down in time. On the second attempt, one of the waves essentially goes to waste because one of our samurais get a bit too excited with the Midare Setsugeka, so the boss simply has way too much HP to even have a chance to make it. On the third attempt, we were way better at spreading out the damage, but thanks to being a bit too cautious with killing, we spent too long gradually working our way through, which turned out to be more of a problem because one of our healers seemed to be a bit too excited to send expensive heals whenever anyone needed healing, so suddenly we wiped out due to normal MP and healing. Now, as we go through the fourth attempt, let's talk about how this fight works. Once the Good King Moggle Mog, praise be, drops to 90% HP, he becomes invulnerable and summons the Mog's Guard. Each of the Mog's Guard does something specific. Notably, there's a paladin and a warrior that each need to be tanked. The king must also be tanked. The tanks apply debuffs such that you need to tank one each. Because the king every so often buffs nearby Mog's Guards, the king must be moved to a different tank every so often, at least optimally. The Black Mage will every so often start casting a huge AoE, which is interrupted by simply hitting it a few times. Any hit works. The White Mage will every so often heal another Mog's Guard. The Bard will every so often buff nearby Moogles to do more damage. This mainly matters for the tanks as they may have to move away from the Bard to avoid that causing trouble. Every so often, the Ranger, which seems to be calling the shots, will indicate a specific maneuver and then a mechanic happens. The most dangerous one is the Moogle Go round, where the healer Moogle has to be hit a few times to stop it, and if you don't, you wipe right then. There's also a maneuver where a few players get crowd controlled and need Ishuna to escape, and likely will die otherwise. But as these maneuvers happen, what matters is how you deal with the Moogles. If a Moogle is slain, the king will fully heal and raise all Moogles a moment later. The king will do this twice, and the third round is initiated with all the Moogles casting Mog Meteor to do heavy raid-wide damage. And after that point, if a Moogle is slain, the king almost immediately starts casting Memento Moogle, and if it finishes, you die. Whenever the king raises the Mog's Guard, he uses his own HP to raise them, so the more damage you can have dealt to them before he does so, the more HP he loses. At most, if the entire Mog's Guard is dead when he raises them, he loses about 42% of his HP. In the final round, you can attack the king only once all the Mog's Guard is dead. This means the general strategy is to carefully poke each Mog down to low HP evenly, and when they're all low, you kill them all off. And start over 2 more times. If a Mog's Guard is killed too early, that can immediately make the fight unwinnable. Notably, as the Black Mage needs to have HP to be interruptible by hitting it, and the Healer Moogle may need this too, letting them stay a bit healthier is often a good idea. The Tank Moogles being near the tanks also means it is recommended to let them stay healthier to let the tanks work on those. Using intentionally weak attacks and avoiding setting up dots is highly recommended too, so you can easily predict how much HP a Mog's Guard will lose at any given time. Big smackers like Midara Setsugeka, I recommend simply avoiding entirely. You'll probably notice this throughout the fight. I am personally using just Ruins, mainly targeting the healthiest Mog's Guard as much as I can. Now, on this 4th attempt, our first wave dealt about 41% damage to the king, which is amazing. The second wave also did about 41% damage to him, so as long as we get the last wave right, this is easily in the bag. And we indeed do make it with about 2/3 of the Memento Moogle cast bar remaining. I will say, this fight is way harder than some of the other A Realm Reborn extremes, simply because what is going wrong can sometimes be difficult to explain or determine, and there is so much going on all at once. Someone simply being a bit too excited can cause a wipe minutes later. So either way, even if we had an excited samurai and an aggressive Cure 2 mage, we made it, and within just 4 pulls. Well done to everyone. What a weird set of duties with random face changes almost. Now, an idea I was recommended by Agni of the community is the free space. The recommendation was in relation to the fact that I would like to choose what jobs to play sometimes, and so every 4 jobs being removed from the roulette, we add a free space where I can choose what to play. Just like the jobs, the free space is removed when it is chosen. I will start including this idea from now on. I wonder if this adds something interesting to the series. Now, that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to support me and my channel more directly, you can become a member like these wonderful people here. You can also alternatively support me through Ko-Fi, link in the description. You can also support the channel by letting the YouTube algorithm know by liking the video, leaving a comment, subscribing, sharing, and hitting the bell to get notified when next I post a video. Fun fact, Ether Charge covers between 5 and 6 GZDs, assuming you Swiftcast the last one, meaning it is worth 250 and 300 potency. Considering Rune 3 starts at 300 potency, this means at that point, Ether Charge technically, at best, is worth plus 0 potency on its own. The actual payoff are the summons, or Lego pieces as they are sometimes called.